The Samsung Galaxy J7 Prime and the Moto G5 Plus. Now the J7 Prime is really competitive with this device, I think, because both are in pretty much the same price category. So the first thing we're going to talk about is build quality while we boot both these devices up in 3, 2, and let's go. And the Motorola is the newer device here. The J7 Prime came out late last year in 2016. I do think that the J7 Prime will boot up faster. That is what I've seen in the past so far. But we're talking about, two phones that utilize plastic / like a cheaper aluminum feel. So definitely both have aluminum built into the construction of both devices, but it's not the most premium aluminum. So you see the Samsung Galaxy J7 Prime is there first while we wait on the Motorola Moto G5. The G5 has a pretty, slow boot up time, honestly. But you can see here on the J7 Prime that this part right here is definitely an aluminum feel, and then it kind of tapers off up here where this becomes a plastic feel, and then a plastic feel down here. On the side of the Moto G5 Plus, the middle part does feel aluminum, and it is. It's like a cheaper feel aluminum. It's not the highest quality aluminum, but it definitely feels aluminum. And when you pick it up, it does feel cold to the touch. Around the edges, though, is where it starts to fall off in terms of build. It's a little bit plasticky, and you know what? I think Motorola could have squeezed a cheaper aluminum around the sides as well, instead of going with this plasticky build with these chamfered edges that are they're not actually chamfered. They're like a plastic polish that looks chamfered. So yeah, anyway, that is the build quality for both of these devices. Both of these devices do run Android. Over here on the J7 Prime, we do have 6.0.1 Marshmallow, and I haven't seen Nougat to this device yet. Over here on the G5 Plus, we do have Android Nougat, so the G5 Plus definitely takes the win in terms of the software department. Now, we do have the TouchWiz layer over top of stock Android here on the J7 Prime, whereas you have pretty close to stock Android here for the Moto G5 Plus. Now, in terms of performance, I do think that the Moto G5 definitely feels a little bit snappier than that of the J7 Prime with its TouchWiz layer over on top of stock Android. You can see right there in the notifications tray the white TouchWiz theming, whereas you have the stock vanilla look here for the Moto G5 Plus. Now, in terms of the way they perform, they both perform pretty well. This got an octa-core CPU. I believe this one also has an octa-core CPU, so pretty great specs on both of these devices. As a matter of fact, you got a Snapdragon 625 clocked in at 2.02 gigahertz there for the Moto G5 Plus. Samsung Exynos octa-core 7870 clocked in at 1.59 gigahertz over here. We do have 3 gigabytes of RAM here on the J7 Prime, and we do have 2 gigs of RAM here for the Moto G5 Plus, but we're going to see how that plays out in multitasking. Alright guys, so speaking of cameras, between the Samsung Galaxy J7 Prime and the Moto G5 Plus, we're taking a look at a 13 megapixel camera here for the J7 Prime and a 12 megapixel camera here for the Moto G5 Plus. Now, on the Moto G5 Plus, you do have the ability to shoot in 4K, which I did confirm. I think I said it didn't shoot in 4K in my previous video, but I did confirm that we go over to the right here that the Moto G5 Plus does shoot in 4K. Now, the picture results from the Moto G5 didn't look quite as pleasing to me as the ones that came out of the J7 Prime. So in terms of camera, I do think the J7 Prime has a better overall picture taking camera. Now, in terms of video, you can only shoot up to full HD on the Samsung, so the video quality is probably better in 4K on the Moto G5 Plus than on the Samsung, but overall the front-facing camera is just a hands-down win for the J7 Prime over the Moto G5 Plus. In terms of storage, the J7 Prime does come in 16 gigabyte as well as 32 gigabyte capacities. It also can be expanded up to over 128 gigs. Same here with the Moto G5 Plus. You come with a 32 gig or a 64 gig model, and they both can be expanded with SD cards. So both are pretty easily equal in terms of storage capacity. You're not going to have any issues with either when it comes to storing photos, applications, games, whatever you want to store on these phones. You're not going to have a problem. I would just recommend don't go with the 16 gig version of the J7 Prime. 16 gig is just really not enough for a smartphone these days if it's going to be your main smartphone for all of your everyday tasks. Now here's another area where I found these phones to both be very good, and that is in the terms of battery life. So the J7 Prime is rocking a 3300 milliamp hour battery, and the Moto G5 Plus has a 3000 milliamp hour battery. But wow, does the Moto G5 Plus with its turbocharger, it really charges up quick, guys. I gotta tell you that. The J7 Prime doesn't charge nearly as fast as the Moto G5 Plus, but the J7 Prime I found to have slightly better battery life overall than the Moto G5 Plus in terms of how long it will last. But both are really good in terms of the battery life department. Easily both will get you through a full day, so there's not a clear winner here. One has fast charging, one has a bit bigger battery here, so I'm gonna call this one a draw as well. Now that we talked about specifications as well as some of the hardware differences between the devices, let's go ahead and do this quick application test. So you can see everything is closed there on the Moto G5 Plus as well as the J7 Prime here. Now this home button only works as a fingerprint scanner. It's not a full-on home button like you have here on the J7 Prime, so it's just a fingerprint scanner to go in the device. Let's go into Appy Geek on both devices, and you could see looks like the J7 Prime is gonna take that one. No, is it? No, Moto G5 Plus about even there. Coming home, let's go into Instagram. And you could see Instagram does take the win there for the G5 Plus. Coming home, the G5 Plus a bit quicker in terms of, you know, getting home faster because it has a capacitive touch button. I'm also going to give that to the Moto G5 Plus. Going into YouTube, you can see YouTube on the Moto G5 Plus is quicker. Both are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. Going to Amazon.com here, you can see Moto G5 Plus for the win there. Still waiting. We're just going to get out of Amazon. We're still waiting too long there for the J7 Prime. Over here on eBay, looked about even. I'd say the Moto G5 Plus took that one. Let's go on to Twitter. And you can see Moto G5 Plus coming home. Let's go into Strava. And the Moto G5 Plus takes that one as well. Coming home, let's go into camera. It looks like the Moto G5 Plus was ready to take a picture first. Let's come over here. Let's go into Best Buy. And it's asking for an annoying pop-up, but you've seen the app still loaded first behind that ad anyway. So let's go into Play Newsstand. And you can see again, I'm getting some of this right here. So even with that, the G5 Plus was quicker. Both are connected to the same Wi-Fi network. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that the Moto G5 Plus has AC Wi-Fi, so it's a better, you know, Wi-Fi strength and speed here for the Moto G5 Plus. Now, I'm not going to run any more applications besides this Google app here and a couple of games because I don't want to be here all day just running these same apps. Let's go into Temple Run now, and you see there is the Moto going off like crazy, and you can see right there, looks like the J7 Prime might have took that one. Let's go into Subway Surfers, another game that is pretty hard for some of these devices to load, and let's see what happens here. Moto G5 Plus ahead there, and let's see which one gets there. Looks like Moto G5 Plus is going to take it there. Still waiting on the Samsung, and there we go. So the G5 Plus seems to perform better than the Samsung device in pretty much every test. Let's go to Appy Geek here, and you see the J7 Prime holds it better in the background. That might be due to its 3 gigs of RAM. Let's go to Instagram. J7 Prime again. Let's go into Play Store. J7 Prime. Let's go into YouTube. J7 Prime. Let's go into Amazon. So here is where the G5 Plus is a problem in terms of RAM management. I do not like the RAM management here for the G5 Plus. It just doesn't hold applications nearly as well as the J7 Prime, and this alone could be the reason why you decide to pick up a J7 Prime over a Moto G5 Plus. You can see just a better multitasker overall than the G5 Plus, and you've seen it again. Each application was held in the background for the J7 Prime, whereas a lot of them had to reload on the Moto G5 Plus. Let's go into Temple Run, and you can see once again had to reload there for the G5 Plus, where Samsung had it held there in the background. Let's go into Subway Surfers again. So the J7 Prime you know, loads applications slightly slower in the first opening, but it holds applications better in the background, so it's better RAM management than the G5 Plus. That pretty much wraps this review up of the Samsung Galaxy J7 Prime versus the Moto G5 Plus. Now, let me name off a few strengths I think that the G5 or the J7 Prime gives you over the G5 Plus. Now, you do get a better front-facing camera with a flash, 8 megapixels in the front-facing camera on the J7 Prime. The selfies just turn out great if you're into that whole thing. Now, you do get a better, and what I think is a better screen here in this TFT panel on the J7 Prime. To me, it just looks sharper. It looks a little better than that HD screen over there on the Moto G5 Plus, full HD, excuse me, on the G5 Plus. And the final reason I think the J7 Prime is a better phone than the G5 Plus is its design. I think it just looks better than the Moto G5 Plus, but that's personal preference. You might think the G5 Plus looks better. It all comes down to personal preference there. Now, the strengths for the Moto G5 Plus and why I think the G5 Plus might be a better phone than the J7 Prime over here is a couple of reasons. So one is the software. So the software is smoother to me on the G5 Plus over the J7 Prime. So if you want, you know, clean stock vanilla Android here, you're gonna get it here with the G5 Plus, and it runs pretty great with an octa-core 625 Snapdragon CPU and 2 gigs of RAM. This phone runs pretty well, not a problem at all in terms of performance, except for multitasking. Now, I do think you get a sharper screen because it's more resolution at, you know, 1080p at a smaller size at 5.2 inches, so it's a higher pixel density, but I do think that the screen looks better, like I said earlier, on the J7 Prime. That's just my opinion there. Now, my final reason is the fingerprint scanner is quicker on the Moto G5 Plus here than on the J7 Prime. To me, it's just a quicker fingerprint scanner than this one on the Samsung. So if you can see, I go right here. It's really hard to see this unless I actually do a fingerprint test video, but